Jim Raffel, Jimraffel, and I was born here in
When's your birthday?
It's next week.
Okay.
I'll be 79.
Okay.
And I've lived here all my life. And it was a nice place to live, even growing up.
Where in Gano actually did you live?
Not this one. Mary and I bought this after we got married. We lived up on the hill, all the way up, and that was the highest part in Gano. The old homestead is still up there. It's been remodeled. My son-in-law and I did that. So I've been here other than my military time, which was almost 6 years. I'm like Archie Bunker. I was in a big one. So.
How was your, what are your earliest memories of Gano as a boy?
Well, I was probably, I don't think, well, I was probably 5. I know it wasn't 6 because I remember you had to be 6 to go to school. There was no kindergarten up here, and it was in Westchester. So you had to be 6 on before your birthday. We started school in September, and we went straight through. There was no holidays because you have to remember that this was all rural, and the farm help, their children were needed on the farm. So that way, I mean, Christmas, we did get out. It depended on which day Christmas came on, the length of vacation that you got Christmas. There was no Easter vacations or anything like they have now, which is good and which I don't think is too good. But we went straight through, and school was always out in April. We had 2 days off for the fair. Butler County Fair was on Thursday and Friday. Other than that, there were no holidays because those were the 2 days that if the farmers here had any stock, they showed it at the fair. And other than that, which I think, looking back, it was good because all of it didn't make any difference what grade you were in. You all caught the bus at the same time, which was 7:30 in the morning. And you went straight to school, and you were out at 3 o'clock.
Where did you go to school?
Westchester.
Hold on 1 second. His sweater's rubbing a little bit. It's not your fault. It's the microphone sometimes. Bring it down just a little bit.
Be sure to tell how many kids were in your family, too.
What?
Be sure and tell how many kids were in your family.
How many were there?
Enough. Cheaper by the dozen, right? That's what your dad thought.
Don't get smart.
Okay, we're good. Go ahead.
Where did you go to school?
In Westchester, Union
Building
Township.
Still there, or
Pardon?
is the building still there that you went to
Yeah,
school in?
that was the building. The first one on the left going up. That was the township hall. And that was built by the township. But I started the school in that building in the 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. And then we moved over to the other building that's there now to start the 4th grade to go on through for your high school. And that was, of course, then all I know was that's where I went to school. Now in the 2nd grade, I was in the 2nd grade when I got diphtheria. Well, diphtheria then, they didn't know what I had, but they soon found out. It kept me out of school almost, well, from, let's see, I was out all winter, and that's when you had to go to bed and stay there, which now they don't do. But I was in bed for so long, when I tried to get up, I couldn't walk because all my muscles were gone. And so that was in the fall, and I went back in the spring, but I had missed so much, they held me back for a year.
Now, was diphtheria, was that something that there was a widespread case of diphtheria going around, or was it?
Here, this whole, well, township, which was Union Township then. I mean, after it once started, I don't remember of anybody dying from it. I mean, if they did, I didn't know about it. But it was pretty bad. I mean, I can remember having a sore throat and a high fever, couldn't eat, couldn't swallow. And that nurse came in, I was home. She had a needle, it looked like a bicycle pump, and give you a shot with that. I mean, it was enough serum in it. If you were a little person, it'd probably blow you up. But that is what they used. It was for diphtheria. Medication, the only thing you took was for, you know, there was no penicillin or anything like that. It was just gargle with salt water, and that was it.
Now, did the other children in your family end up with
Yes, I had, there was 8 of us kids, and four of them, I got it first, and then 3 others got it, and by that time, they knew what was really happening. So they, the other part of the family got shots, which really helped.
Now, what was your school day like when you went to school in the early years, when you were 7 or 8 years old and you were going to the school? What was your day like there?
At school?
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't think at that time you did not learn your ABCs until you got in school. So in the first grade, that's where you started. And then to print. And that pretty well filled up your day as far as reciting your ABCs. And most of the reading was done by the teacher, Mrs. Conrad. And then your lunch hour, at that time, you got what they called a hot dish and a peanut butter sandwich and a bottle of milk and a cookie for a dime. So pretty near everybody bought their lunch, okay? And you usually had lunch period was, I think, from 11:15 to 12 o'clock. And that old cafeteria that's up there now, down in Newport, the Township Hall, that's where everybody ate. Didn't make any difference what grade you were in, and they all came in by groups. And it was only the total enrollment for the time that I went up there, the highest I can remember, there were 245 pupils. Now that included all the kids they picked up from Gano, and then the bus went around down Cincinnati-Dayton, up Hawk Road to Pisgah, and picked those children up there, and then came back Westchester Road to school. And George Michael was a bus driver. And at that time, if you drove the bus, you had to buy it. If you had a driver, you knew that he was the owner, and George Michael owned his bus, and the state highway used to inspect them every once in a while. And so that was about it. And then second grade, which I went back for my second year in the second grade. Well, and from there on until I was an honor student, because I had really, between my brothers and sisters, since I couldn't do anything, they would bring work home. And when I did go back to school, I was on the honor roll up until the 7th grade. And then I think I lost my mind. Yeah, but
Now, when you weren't in school and you were living on a farm, what were your responsibilities as a young boy on the farm? What did you do?
well, now we didn't actually have a farm. We had 7 acres here in Gano. We had 2 cows and a pig and chickens. And our responsibilities, Paul, my brother, and I, my oldest brother, Bob, he usually got exempted from all this because he, being older, was more or less into sports. Now, the only sports program that this township, which it was then, ever had was basketball. There was not enough money here to buy uniforms or equipment for anything but basketball. Now, Paul and I had to feed the chickens and the cows. Now, my father worked on the railroad too, and now his hours were not regular. So my mother she took care of the cows milking because of my dad maybe not being home, and she did not want the cows going at an irregular hour. So Paul and I had to feed the chickens, feed the pigs, feed the cow, and we had I think an acre of alfalfa, which we got 3 cuttings off of that. And we didn't grow any corn because other than what you would get from a garden, we did not grow corn to feed. But our work was cut out. Now my sisters, their job they had things to do. Help clean house, keep it clean, help my mother with the laundry, and stuff like that. So we all had something to do. I mean, it wasn't a life of leisure, but it was a good life. I mean, now we had a furnace, a coal furnace, but we also had a stove, a coal stove in the kitchen. Now we had a well, and we had a cistern. And on the end of this stove, I remember that old stove was an estate stove. I think it was made here in Hamilton. It had what they called a reservoir. On the end of it, it held 15 gallons of water. And it was Paul and I's duty to see that always had water in it, because that used to get hot from the stove. And it had an oven on the other end, which my mom baked in and what have. And so I guess between all of us, it was a good deal. So we were always, we used to fight once in a while, but other than that.
It was good to have a lot of children in your family then. So
Yes,
chores were
there was 8 of us kids. And the thing that I remember, my dad had a car which we needed. Now, figure 1925, I don't know when the actual, what they called the Depression, but it was during that time. And so you didn't know, everybody seemed like that lived here was on the same scale. You don't know if you were rich or poor. I mean, you very seldom, we played together and did things. We made a ball diamond. My father built a tennis court. We played tennis. And my brother Paul and I, since it was the only tennis court that I know of, and my father insisted that it had to be kept in good shape. And since we only had the cistern and the well, we had a water pump, but it wouldn't really pump enough water. We'd have to roll, had a big roller, weighed 200 pounds, to roll that tennis court because it was clay. And then we'd take he had made like a screen out of wire, and we dragged had sand, put sand on it. And then if it rained real hard, all that clay would crack. So we had to drag that screen around until all the cracks were filled. And then we had to roll it and mark it, and for doubles. And we always had, I guess, a lot of friends because of the tennis court. Now, Paul and I played, and we went to one tournament, and that was at Fairfield. And
Jim, this was at your house you had a tennis court?
yeah, it's still up there. Jamie, who lives there now, is my grandson. It's been in grass. He put a swimming pool out there and stuff like that. But it's still there. And we were in a tennis tournament at Fairfield. Not that I wasn't that good, but my brother Paul was real good. And I had to play him in the finals. Well, when you talk about the finals, you talk about three of us in the finals, and one of them was a girl. And we didn't, but Paul won first place. I won second. He got a medal. I didn't get anything, but that was okay. I mean, but that's really the way. It was no big thing, life. But Gano really hasn't changed. If you drive through it now, the streets are the same as they were then. The only thing then was they were all gravel. And if you came into Gano, like you did today, you had to, unless you come up to the pasture. If you were going to turn left, since the roads were gravel, you'd better be in that lane with the ruts in it to take you to the left. And if you wanted to come right, same way on the other side, you had to be in that. And it was a long time, probably in the early 30s. They weren't really blacktop like they are now, but they were what I think they called tar and chip. And we thought we were in heaven, boy, when they came through and blacktop these roads.
About how many houses or people would have been in the area referred to as
at that time, there was probably, I think there was 30 houses here, and there may have been maybe 40 children.
And Gano seemed to kind of be separate from Westchester. You thought of yourself as a separate community.
Yes, it was. It was like, now if you don't know when since they did what they have done, we're called Westchester, which is okay. But so is Maud's, and so is Port Union, and so is everything else. I mean, it's Westchester. And to begin with, that was kind of troublesome for local delivery. Mail, we're still on Cincinnati, 42, 2542. But the way that the maps and stuff that they have now, I mean, I've had them come and pick up my lawnmower to take up to Westchester Lawn and Garden. And I thought they'd sure ask me how to get here, but they didn't. I mean, they said, we'll be there like on Thursday to pick up your mower, Jim. And so I asked him, I said, you know, what do you use for routing? Well, he had it all on like a computer, cross streets and the whole thing. I mean, it was, so I did learn something by that.
So then there was Gano, and there was Port Union, and there was Westchester. Did you do much business in Westchester? I mean, as a kid, you have gone, you went to Westchester for school.
Yeah.
Is that where your family went for businesses and things like that too, the store or?
For businesses?
Yeah, to do errands and get things to the store. Did you go to Westchester to do that kind of thing as
No.
a family, or?
Actually, there wasn't a whole lot being done in that period of time. There just wasn't. I mean, I guess there wasn't any money or whatever, because I remember Mr. Campbell, who was the superintendent or the principal, lived here in Gano, and he told my mom for 2 months that the teachers didn't get any wages because there wasn't any money to pay them, and they were paid through the county. So you just didn't, you just have to put yourself back in that time, and there was nothing to compare it to. I mean, like now, I can, even I had 4 girls, and they're all married and gone, but they didn't want to stay here. It wasn't that they didn't like it, it was because their education took them away, which is okay. But for me, I guess I'm like the Indian. My spirit's here. I mean, other than that, and I think my father, having been a railroader for almost 50 years, I was a railroader for 48 years and some months. It just, if you like the work, that's 75% of the battle. And I did like that. Started out on the old steam engine.
When did you start working on the railroad? How old were you?
What, honey?
How old were you when you started working on the railroad?
Okay, I was a junior in high school, and since I had been set back a year, it made me 17. And my dad come home one day from work. It was during the summer, and he asked me if I wanted to go to work on the railroad. Well, I said, they're not really hiring until you're 18. And yes, he said, that's true. Now Mr. Markley was a road foreman, and he said to my dad, and this is what my dad told me, he said, Mr. Raffel, he said, I understand you have a big dumb boy. And my dad said yes. He said, I don't know how dumb he is, but he said he is big. So he said, well, send him down. We'll see if we can't work out a deal. Well, my birthday being in April, that was in March. And Mr. Markley asked me if he would jump my date. Well, no, he said, we don't have to do that. He said, you're close enough to being 18. He said, we can work it through, which they did. And so I went to work on the railroad. And the last year that I tried it in high school, now I thought, I could master this thing of working all night with the scoop shovel, shoveling coal, and going to work. The only thing I did was get dirty and tired fall asleep. But I soon got over that. And then when I turned 18, I had to register for the draft. And I had to register in Hamilton. That was draft board number 9. And I went and registered, and I knew there wasn't enough. All the rural people here were farmers. The farmers got deferred, okay? I knew that I didn't have a chance for deferment. So after I went to work, I decided that I had heard that the Merchant Marine would take you if you, before you turned 18. And I was not 18 when I registered. So they took me. Now, I didn't know. I thought it would be like the Navy. Well, it wasn't. I went and took the training. And just as soon as I got out of training, I was reclassified and put in 1A. And to be deferred for job-wise, it was a 2B deferment. Well, I was put in 1A. And so I got that, and I said, well, you know, I'll be gone very shortly. Well, the fall, they usually gave you 30 days from the time you were notified. Well, 30 days, and I was called up, given a physical, and sent to Camp Atterbury. And from Camp Atterbury, I went to Camp Robinson in Arkansas. And being young, I really didn't think too much about it. World War II was going on and the whole thing. And so I took my training, got a 10-day extension, what they called it then, and came home, went back and went to California, and I was gone 5 years and 3 months. And I was in the infantry for 2.5 years. In fact, I was in there when they dropped a bomb. And some say Hiroshima, we call it Hiroshima. And we were back off of the duty, getting reorganized for the invasion of Japan. Now, that was the only time that I ever really considered I didn't have a chance. Having fought the Japs for 2 years, I just thought, knowing them like I did, I mean, I didn't know them. I just knew that they were the things that they did. So then the war was over, just as soon as they dropped 2 bombs, if you've read anything about that. They never told us. I didn't know. But anyway, when we went into Japan, we just went in on a ship. There was no invasion. We just went in. And a friend of mine, Williams from Kentucky, we went down to see where the bomb had dropped. Now, the only thing that was above ground that was standing was a concrete building in that whole city. And that was a big city. And I know that there was a lot died, got killed in the whole thing. But probably, if it hadn't been for that, there would have been an invasion. And I don't know if any of us would have come out of it or not. I mean, those are things that you speculate.
So you were in the service for 5 years?
Yes.
And then you came back?
Yes, I came back, but in the meantime, I thought I really wasn't ready to get out. I didn't want anything more to do with the infantry. I made up my mind to that, and I still had a year of high school that I wanted to finish. So I went over and I re-enlisted in the Air Force for 3 years, okay? And I stayed. It was like my birthday every day. I mean, it was so much different. And while I was in there, I got assigned to a B-29 crew, and we flew what they called a weather route. We'd be gone. I had a old B-29, had the bomb bays taken out, and in the bomb bays they had put these big gas, rubber tanks for gas. And we usually leave Edmonton in Canada about 8:30 at night. And I know the pilot, we'd back that thing up. There wasn't too many airfields that could take a B-29, especially in takeoff. He'd back that thing up to the end of the fence, lock the brakes, and wind those engines up. Every rivet in it thing would vibrate, kick the brakes off, and away we'd go. I keep looking out to see where the fence was. And finally you'd lift out. Now those flights lasted for anywhere from 20 to 22 hours. And what you were doing up in the cabin, they had these maps that were, which probably an instrument as big as a radio is doing it. But at that time, they had these 6-foot maps, and they were charting all the weather data. It came in, and it was then sent back to Washington. So CONUS, they called it, so they knew where all the bad weather was, or the good weather, or whatnot. And we'd fly out of Edmonton, head for Seattle, make a left Seattle, and go down towards Hawaii, and make a right flank movement, and come back, and maybe fly towards Japan, or whatever, and then back to Edmonton. Now, being young, I was always hungry, so I'd pack a big lunch. Now the men that I were with on that B-29, they were all regulars. They had been in the Air Force, for some of them for 23, 24 years, and they had kids as old as me. And so anyway, I had a big lunch, and I shared it. But all them guys did was drink. I mean, whiskey would take them wherever they wanted to go. So they'd drink whiskey, then they'd get hungry as dogs. Then he'd come, threaten to throw me off if I didn't give him my lunch. So I shared with him. But I told him the next flight, we'd up one day, and then we had 3 days off. And it was good duty, but I don't know what, I was on there as a crew chief. I couldn't understand that. I didn't know where the switches were. But they said, hey, don't worry about it. I mean, we'll take care of you. And I said, yeah, like you did my lunch. But
So when you got back here, you were 24, 25 years old?
I was, let's see, 20, I went in 18. I was not quite 24. But I did get what I went after. And then I was assigned to right field. And now when I was there, I could see that, I thought for a while that the Air Force would be my, because unmarried, never, you know. But I seen there was a lot of officers and enlisted men that were looking for a place to go. The war was over. They had a lot of excess pilots, the whole thing. And every time the door would open up there at right field, they'd jump to attention. I was used to coming to attention and stuff, but that was so fake. You know what I mean? They were just out to look for a place to land, and so then I went from there. They sent me to Nebraska during a blizzard. That was in February, and to get 2 big diesel engines started, and I went out there. We got hung up in a snowdrift, and we was there for about, I don't know, 8-10 hours, and they finally sent another engine out, plow, drug us in. Then I got to Kearns, and there wasn't anybody out at the field. I mean, I had to get a hold of somebody, because that's who I was assigned to, and I finally got somebody. And they come in with a snow plow. I swear to God, it must have been 20 feet high and had one of them things on the front, you know, that a snow blower, and took me out to the base. Well, by that time, they were flying hay out of Nebraska for the livestock because of that blizzard. And the reason for that nobody could get close to the cattle. I have an old Life magazine, if you remember Life as it was then, that with the pictures, and it really showed the sheep eating the tails off of the beef cattle because they were so hungry, and they were just standing there immobile. And so the purpose was to get the hay. Had 24 bales. I used a C-47, 24 bales at a time. I don't know where they were bringing it from, but there was thousands of bales up there stacked around the ramp. But we'd put on 24 bales and tie a rope around our waist or harness, open the doors, and then it was up to the pilot to get in as low as he could, as low as speed as he could, and then they would hit the switch, which was like what they would use to drop bombs when we were over the livestock. And then we'd kick out. We had 3, 6, 9 bales, 3, 3, and 3. And each one we'd get behind them and push them out with your feet. And we did that one day, didn't think too much about it, trying to get it in where it was supposed to be. And we had a milk house that they used to bring the milk in, you know. Well, God almighty, it flew in 300 different directions, that milk house did. And we got back to the base. That rancher was on the phone and said, we had bombed his property. Well, it wasn't that we intentionally did it. It would just happen that way. So then they said, well, Raffel, they found out I had been a fireman on the railroad. And they had this one big hangar that they were using. Had 3 basketball courts in it and no heat. They had these big boilers. The boilers were working, but what they didn't know, they were what they called fire tube boilers. You had to open the front end and the back end. It had these big brushes that you ran through these tubes. And when you got the tubes open, then the fire would start drawing. So I did that for 2 days, and by that time, I was only out there 21 days. And they sent me into Denver, and they wanted me to re-enlist, up me 1 grade. And I said, no thanks, I've had all the damn flying and boiler cleaning and what have you. I'm going home. So I went down soon as I got my discharge, and American Airlines, and bought a one-way ticket. And come out, that was it.
Back.
Yep.
What had changed in all